Let me set the scene. Here we are. We've arrived. It's a small country pub. A small, intimate dining room. 5, 6 tables at the most. And it's Sunday lunchtime. So the tables are full. The 3 of us, my parents and I, are sitting at one of them. And there are families and couples all around, just generally chatting along. I have to ask, why choose this moment to tell the big story? Why now? With hindsight, well, I think my mother was just going into dementia, and one of the first things that left her was her awareness of social norms. This probably was not the right place or the right time, but this was the moment she chose, and I couldn't alter that. As she started speaking, I became aware that the people around us were becoming very quiet. Conversations had softened, cutlery noises have lessened. It was almost like time stopped to allow space for the words to come out and the story to be given justice. This was the story I'd been curious about for over 40 years. I'd caught glimpses of it over the years, but I didn't know if it was true. But when something's not talked about in a family by anyone, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, believe me, you don't ask. The one snippet I had heard, overheard actually, so I couldn't mention that I'd heard it, was that my father had gone into the hospital, scooped her up in his arms against the doctor's wishes, and carried her out of the ward. If I played that scene out in my head, which I did do several times, I had what one can only describe as a vision of it being a very romantic moment, and very much like the scene in the film Officer and Gentleman, where Richard Gere lifts the young woman away from her factory desk and carries her out, and everybody's happy for them as they leave. Of course, I now realise, after hearing the full story, this was completely wrong. This wasn't a romance. This was a tragedy. Why was it never spoken of? Mum and Dad had lived through the war. They'd lived through air raids, separation, loss of friends, and uncertainty. It's almost as if grief can be parcelled up, put into a box, and kept there until the day you're ready to open it and look at it and wallow in it. And that day could well be 60 years later. And while that box is sitting somewhere private in the house, life is going on around it. Don't open it. Don't peep in it. You might just release something you can't cope with. But grief doesn't always stay where you put it. As soon as she said the words, "He was a beautiful boy," I knew this was the story I'd waited 40 years to hear. It seems grief had never gone away. It had been carried through the years. When she finished talking, a few tears fell, and she wasn't the only one in the room who had something in their eye. It wasn't for very long, but the moment was marked. And while life returned to normal for those people in the room, conversations picked up, cutlery and glasses clinked, my life, the ground under my life, had shifted. I now knew for sure that I wasn't one of 6 children, I was one of 7. Had he lived, I would have had an older brother. I've always been able to run down the names of us 6 children very quickly, but now I've got to make a little gap and insert the name of my brother Barry. It unfolded that he had lived for just 24 hours, and in that time he'd been kissed goodbye by his two older sisters, aged 3 and 2, and then handed over to a priest and a sister. I'm not sure if this was a nun or a medical sister. And they both then carried him away, and he was never seen again by my parents. Had it been now, and not the 1940s, he may have had a chance of life, because it transpired that he had a hole in the heart. But this was 1947, and the immediate aftermath of losing him, they had no explanation as to why he died. My mother apparently blamed herself, because while she was heavily pregnant, she'd gone out in what was a really bad winter's day. She'd slipped and fallen on the snow, and so she thought that she'd done something while taking that risk that had endangered her baby's life and had led to him dying. And she had what we would now call a bit of a breakdown and ended up being in the hospital. Unfortunately, she was in a ward where there were women with new babies, young mothers around her, cooing and kissing and celebrating that they had got their much-loved new addition to their family. Here she was, having had that feeling for just 24 hours and knowing that she wasn't going to be held on to it. She was listening to these sounds around her and becoming extremely distressed by it all. And it was at this point, against the doctor's wishes, who thought she should actually be in the hospital. After all, she had only just really given birth and was still overcoming the physical bit of that, as well as the emotional side of what had happened. But my father was having none of this, and he came onto the ward in his RAF uniform, picked her out of her bed and said, "She's coming home with me." They went on to have 4 more children. I was the next one, then another girl, and then 2 boys. It seems astonishing to me now the complete silence erected around the fact that a boy had been born into the family and had passed away. Nothing said, nobody mentioned it. It was just not looked at in any way, shape or form. Think for a moment what would have happened currently in that situation. There would have been a marking of that child's existence. There would maybe have been a service, a ceremony, a burial, even a small white coffin. There would have been something that said he was here and he mattered and he impacted on their lives. But no, nothing of that type of thing happened back then. For 60 years, my brother existed as a silence, a gap in the family story. But that Sunday lunchtime, he was remembered. His name was Barry. So I did say there would be some sad stories along the way, and this is certainly one of them. I hope if you or anyone you know has suffered a similar loss, that you've had the support you need to get through that, and also that you've been able to share and talk about it with other people. If not, maybe now's the time to start looking for the people you want to share it with. I'd be interested to hear in the comments your experiences. Were we unusual in our family in never approaching this and never talking about it? Or in the 1940s, was this something that was common? If you've stayed to the end with me, thank you very much again. And next time, I will definitely be looking for something light-hearted to share with you. Because, yes, it's a sad story, but in this family, there was lots and lots of laughter too. So if you've enjoyed the story, or if enjoyed isn't the right word, but if you've been moved by the story, then I would appreciate it if you would press the like button and subscribe to the channel so that you'll be notified when other stories are published. Meantime, pick up those rambling boots, make sure they're in good settle for the next time round, and I'll see you then. Happy rambling!